Prayer.
Let's pray together. All right, let's, on.
Lord's hearing you.
Okay, here we go. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for our time together this afternoon. Give us wisdom and help us to be patient as we've had a full day already. And help us not to get in a hurry, but to be thorough and to do what's right for Georgians. We pray for wisdom. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Representative. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your attendance again into this committee. I'll try not to fail to mention it at the end of this meeting, but I want to commend each one of you for your attention and work on this measure. We're going to hear today from Senator Dugan, and the primary sponsor of Senate Bill 2, and his House sponsor, Representative Donahue. There has been a lot of work, and I commend you two gentlemen that are carrying this piece of legislation. Representative Pizzold, thank you for your work over the weekend on this bill as well. And everyone else who has given input, those out in the audience, I appreciate your efforts on working on this bill. I announced just a few minutes ago that we will be working off of a substitute to SB 2. If you look up in your upper right-hand corner, this is going to be LC 430696 ERS. I'm going to make sure everybody hears that right. LC 430696 ERS. Hearing no confusion, we're going to move forward with the presentation of this substitute. I would ask if you have an original copy of SB2, pay attention. If you've got a copy that's a working copy and you've marked it up, pay attention to the line change and the section changes where you can follow along and leave out of here with clarity of what we have in front of us as substitute SB2. Gentlemen, you're on at the table, Mike. I appreciate you again, and we'll turn it over to you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this committee's attention to detail in the process. You took a diamond in the rough and that we sent over from the Senate, and you've done a lot of polishing.
Do pass. No.
Thank you, Mr.
Heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
These are not recorded, are they? Okay. Okay. I'm just playing. We've talked about that a couple of times in the Senate this year. No, we have some changes that we've incorporated in Senate Bill 2 based off recommendations that we have from both members within the committee and members outside the committee, but still in the House. And I don't have any real consternation with any of the changes. Now, it has been changed enough that at this point, I think it is appropriate for Representative Donahue to take this baby and run with it, because he's been heavily involved with answering each of your questions going through here, and I appreciate the effort that he did. And even though I may have not looked like it when some of you were addressing me individually, Representative, no, I do appreciate your involvement with it, because it did make it a better bill. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Donahue, I want to make a comment to the committee, if you will. We want to give him the freedom to walk through the substitute bill that's being presented here in its entirety. To my committee, if you have questions, jot down, make yourself a note, as we did the last time. We'll come back and let him address them. And at that point, Representative Donahue, I want to give you and the senator freedom. If a technical question's asked, that we need to have some help from those folks in the profession behind you,
yes, sir.
We'll pick someone and call them up and recognize them at the podium, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you each one for the opportunity again today to bring SB 2. We went over quite a few questions which each one of you asked, and again, we appreciate you vetting this process to make sure that we do the right thing before it leaves this committee. Some of the things we started at, I think from last time, we explained what the bill does. Okay, one of the things we changed, I'm going to go over line by line, but one of the things was in the state, we're going to have on license, it's one payment. Okay, you're just going to, one payment. Then what we're going to do is we're going to allow you to understand each line that we start. Line 27, if you'll turn there, you'll see alternative permitting was added to the definition in section 2. This definition is necessary as it is what allows for applicants to choose a private entity for plan reviewers through taking the duty away from the government and further reducing cost. Okay, that's 27 through line 29. On line 32, you'll see definition for regulatory fee was changed to reflect the statutory.
Representative, let me interrupt you.
Yes, sir.
You're working from, I think, one of the first drafts of the substitute, and we
Okay.
have now the actual substitute.
That we
that
just received.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. And so where you were just at, beginning on regulatory fees, that's gonna be our line 34. If you don't mind, take just a minute. Yeah, do you mind? Representative Pizzo's about to pull you out of a bind here.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for any confusion this may appear, but we want to make sure that everybody's tracking properly here.
Well, and some of these are gonna change. I just received all this today. This is everything we changed that I received night before last, so we pulled everything on the lines. So, let's see here. Now, I guess we'll have to, and Senator, if you wanna look, we might try to.
Y'all take
See
a
if we
couple
wanna get
minutes,
on the
no
same
rush,
line
just take a
since-
couple minutes.
Okay, so line 29 was the first. You want me to read that again?
Yes,
These last
please, just
two?
start
That's not a
over.
problem.
Thank you.
Okay, on line 29, the alternative permitting was added to definitions in section 2. The definition is necessary as it allows for applicants to choose a private entity for plan reviewers through taking the duty away from the government and further reducing cost. Line 34, you'll see the definition of regulatory fee was changed to reflect the statutory definition already in existence. This will make the language in the code section more uniform, and besides, the definition works better for the bill's purpose as it reads more broadly. Then line 75, you're gonna look at in paragraph 6 of code section 4813.5 was added to the end of the provision under section 2, subsection D, to make the definition more narrowly interpreted and to be aligned more with the statutory language. This changes makes the code section clearer and allows it to read understood better. Okay, line 155, the previous language that permitted the bifurcation payment option has been removed entirely. This was the result of numerous concerns regarding the feasibility of the setting up such a process as the computer database are not equipped to proceed dual payments. I also pointed out no other entity allows for dual payments and could create big burdens and expenses in order to make the transition. It has also been thought to be potentially problematic, as applicants may be confused as to what they still owe after they made the first 50 payments. Line 166, the language in the provision starting with upon approval of an application has been separated from subsection 2, and it made its own subsection 3. So it's no longer subsumed under the 10% late penalty provision that listed above. Line 1, is that 194 or 174? Let me. 91. Is that 191 right here? From here. Yeah, let's see the provision there. So let me make sure here. 194. Yes, 194. Professional licensing as well as Chapter 5 of Title 10 Securities. The 6 specified chapters listed under Title 12 have also been removed so as to exempt Title 12 in the entirety. Line 201, the number of members that will compose of the voluntary certification program ready for partnership has been increased from 12 to 13. I'm sorry. Then we go to line 224. I apologize. Okay, line 224, the number of members that will compose of the voluntary certification program ready for partnership has been increased from 12 to 13. The increase reflects the additional member on line, I guess that's gonna be what now? 235. That will compromise subsection G, who will be recommended by the National Federation of Independent Businesses. This will give the small businesses some say in the process. Okay, line 263, the prior sentence. The notice shall also include a certification that such proposed modification to its rules have been reviewed by the Attorney General, that the Attorney General has found such proposed modifications to be with the agency statutory authority to adopt has been removed completely from the substitute. This was necessary because AG could be in a situation in which their office is testifying on behalf of an entity that would be regarded as a client of the agency. That would be a conflict of interest. That's what Representative Fleming talked about and explained pretty well last week. Then we have add section 4, line 122, which changes title 48, chapter 5, ad valorem tax of property. Okay. And again, thank you for the little bit extra time. All this we just received this morning on some updates. So we've had to go through and try to change numbers from numbers, and I do appreciate the courtesy of that.
Thank you, Representative. And I want to make sure everybody's clear on that one. He said he just received this morning. He's talking about the final draft out of Lake Council. I think everybody knows how this process works. He knew what the changes were. I don't want anybody walking out here saying the man carrying the bill just got it when he sat down.
Thank you, yes.
Not this time.
The line number.
But all right, we've got a few questions right here. Number 23, Chairman Peake.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Senator Duggan, Representative Dunn, I addressed to both of y'all. I guess I know you've done a lot of work on this, and I applaud you for trying to adapt it to make sure it's something that we can move forward. Lines 215 through 248. I'm not quite sure I understand the logic of why you even need this, if you do or don't. So my question is, one, did DCA ask to have this in there? Was this something they came to you and approached you on, or is this something that's crucial to the bill? It just seems like we're just adding another level of bureaucracy that maybe, unless you tell me it's absolutely necessary. So that's the question.
No, go ahead on that. I understand.
Okay. There's been conversation one way or another, and I know that the entire committee understands that this is a temporary board that is disbanded as soon as the metrics are established within the evaluation framework. The reason that the members are selected as they are is to provide a broad cross-section of entities across the state that have a unique perspective to help best create those metrics. Will the bill die without it? No.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, follow up?
Yes.
So you wouldn't have any opposition to, unless there's some compelling reason for keeping that in there, of striking that entire section with an amendment at the appropriate time? Would that give you heartburn? Would you, got any problem with that?
Will you vote for the bill if you strike that?
I think it'll sure make it a lot more amenable too. Yeah.
It's not time for that motion.
Will you go
yet.
eat it? Will you go eat at Cheddar's after we're finished? You know, quid pro quo kind of.
With a gift card.
And I'll be sure to tip the wait staff.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have heartburn.
Okay. I may, if there's a will of the committee, I may at the appropriate time make a motion for that.
You know,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
You may.
both of the chairmans, you know, because it doesn't, what you're saying, even if we strike it, it doesn't preclude DCA from
From doing that.
creating
Sure.
with these same people
Right.
to bring them in to help establish it.
Sure. And that's, yeah.
So, and that would be what I recommended them to do. Here's what we thought would work, and they can look at it at that point and say, yeah, we like that format. We'll just
Okay.
bring them in on our own.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, Chairman Peake, and I'll come back and recognize you at the appropriate time. Number 11, I have down there, Darshan. Representative Kendrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I've already spoken with the sponsor on a few of these things, but I have 4 comments. Starting with line 43 and 44. This relates to the portion that says, shall require the applicant to pay 50% of the regulatory fees due. And I explained that there was some different interpretations of if that 50% meant at least 50%, so you could require 50, 60, 70, all the way up to 100, or if you meant to put the word in there only 50%, and 2 people had different interpretations in there. So I wanted at the appropriate time to make a clarification if it's still your understanding that that is supposed to be at least 50%.
Representative, you're on line 43.
Yes,
Right.
43
A
and 44.
regulatory fee, a county or municipality shall require the applicant to pay 50%.
Yes.
And the question is that the clarity is not there on the
Right,
50%.
is it only 50% or at least 50%? Because those are 2 different things. So I'm just trying to clarify what we need to put in there to make sure it's very clear that it's only 50% or either at least 50%
Explain
based
the
on that.
definition that you were told, that, how you came up with the question that you were told by.
Okay, so, in speaking with, people who were involved in some of the changes of the bill, their interpretation was that it would only be 50% of the regulatory fees that are due that are required. When I read it initially, I read it to mean to only require at least 50%. And so my point is there's some ambiguity as 2 people are interpreting it differently. So I would like a word in there to clarify, is it only 50% or at least 50%, so that the courts, or if, don't have to do their own clarification.
Go ahead.
The way I think when I answered earlier, and I want to make sure that I'm even completely right, is that if all the paperwork comes in properly from that time forward, you can pay the 50% down. If you came into the 39th day, you're okay. On the 40th day, and you started looking at a penalty at that time, you would be looking at paying the other 50%. And if the penalty went to what we originally were talking about, the 80th day, that would be a 50% that you would not pay. So correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's what I had explained to her earlier.
Okay. The intent was no more than 50%. What I don't want is a municipality to have the discretion to say, I know it can be at least 50%, but we're going to make it 95%, and then have 5% left over on the back end. There was several questions last time when we were in committee about what are the teeth in the bill? What's going to hold somebody honest on the scheduling of it? It's the other 50%. That's the teeth. Is that Mr. Woodall? No. So the incentive is, we want you to have it as streamlined and efficient of a process as you can as a municipality, and to incentivize that, I'm going to pay you 50% up front to get this process going, and I'm going to reserve that other 50% until I get the thing back that I've paid the first 50% on.
Okay, so the word that needs to go after pay then is only 50%. Just to my point, to clarify it, because 2 people had 2 different interpretations on it.
Could, okay, I'm sorry.
Senator, Representative, I want to make one observation right here, and I don't want small business turned into Judy non-civil. Okay? But if we say pay only 50%, and I go in there, or Pizzold or whomever goes in there, and they want to go ahead and pay 100%, they should be able to do that. If you say only 50%, they're going to be limited to only 50%.
I thought that's what he just
Right.
said, though.
But if we put the word only in there, then you're only allowed to pay the 50%. Is that correct?
And you don't have to. If the payee, the payor has the discretion on, I can pay you're required to pay 50%. If I'm the payer, I'm the one that's requesting the service or the permit or anything, I can say, Bob Sue, I know you, I know it's going to get back tomorrow, I've got the money right here, I can go ahead and pay the 100. But the requirement for the payor is 50%. A municipality can't say you got to pay 75% and then 25 on the backside. I feel like I'm making this more confusing to you than,
Yeah, I'm just, okay.
so it is Judy non-civil, okay.
I do think, I'm reading back over it unless the chair is reading wrong. I think inserting the word's kind of harmless, but it does protect you from going above, a mandate of above 50%. They can't go above it. But
don't
it
wanna be
doesn't,
mandated,
it doesn't
yes.
limit me from going ahead and paying 100
right.
if I want to. All right, so do you want to insert the word only?
Yes.
Oh,
Duly noted. All right, we're gonna go ahead and do this because Representative Kendrick, we're gonna come back to Chairman Peak in a minute for his strike here, recognize him. But while Representative Kendrick's on line 43, after the word pay, insert the word only before the number 50.
Do I need to make a formal motion? Or are you
Yes,
asking? Okay,
you're recognized for that motion.
I move that we insert the word only on line 43 after the word pay and before the number 50 to LC 430696 ERS.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any opposition to that? Seeing none, that will stand. All right, thank you, Representative Kendrick. Let's, we got a Christmas tree up here, Senator, so you're a popular man over here. Number 8. Chairman Pizzo,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Representative Pizzo.
Yeah, Freudian slip. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to say, Senator Dugan, you've been fantastic to work with. I know that leaving this committee last week, it kind of felt a little disheartening, but I mean, I really appreciate your willingness to work to make this bill better, and you certainly have done that. I've got a couple notes from our meeting last week. Line 95, we had spoken about changing legal residence to domicile.
domicile, right, you're right.
I didn't know if that was still something that we wanted to do. In my somewhat old age, I feel like I'm losing my mind as to the actual reason for that, but I know that was mentioned. And also line 112, striking the words "when possible" regarding site visits. I didn't know if that was something that that we had agreed to. I know that was in my notes, just so that you know, I can imagine people coming in during the peak hours, and doesn't necessarily apply to the restaurant industry, but I know what it's like to be in a restaurant when it's, you know, customers everywhere, and all of a sudden you got to drop everything to be in compliance. And would you be agreeable to striking that as well?
I'm fine. They're both oversights
Okay.
on the
Excellent.
modification.
Thank you very much.
And I understand that I'm going to several restaurants after this thing is done. So, thank you.
You have to come to Columbus.
All right, thank you. Next, number 10, Representative Beverly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to draw your attention to Section 4. Is this, just for the sake of clarity, is this added into this bill? Was it a previous bill?
Yes,
tagged
yes, it
on?
was.
So you just tagged on?
HB 204 was added in. Yes, it passed out of the House. Pretty much, I don't have the complete vote count, but it was
Yeah, it's pretty
probably
significant.
88, 90%.
Unfortunately, I think I voted against that.
You
And,
did.
Yeah, well, what I want to be clear on is, in some of these municipalities, they obviously aggregate these bills because a significant portion of their revenues come from making sure that people pay their fees on non-tax related issues.
Yes, sir.
And I know it's a problem for municipalities to sort of uncouple this stuff because there's a chance that there'll be freeloaders, that, you know, free riders that happen when they don't pay their trash bill or their water bill. And so how do you mitigate the risk against losing revenues if you sort of uncouple this from a bill? And I certainly respect the language, but I have a problem with sort of putting municipalities in harm's way over time if you don't have a mechanism in place that would keep these bills together. And so could you help me understand what this does that 204 did not do.
204 basically, and I didn't carry that, I think Representative Harrell did. And with that, what we were trying to, or he was trying to accomplish was the opportunity that's affected me, for instance. And I think he just told me this morning it affected his son that was going to have a loan on his house. What happens is when you go to borrow money and you're paying your house, they put fees on top of what you're going to be borrowing. And then they hold that money, and then they make sure that you're paying your insurance, your mortgage, and several other things, depending on if you live in the city and the county. With that, his interpretation was that that's a number of dollars will come up to, if it's $100,000 on your house or $200,000, you have to fall into a percentage. With that percentage, I had my daughter and son-in-law that they were looking to borrow money, and when they did, they were a percent from having the enough with what the estimated charges would be on their taxes. And without those, they would have fell under that. So I loaned them the money to build a house. And when we did that, then everything worked out right, but it gave another 4 to 5 months for us to go through the process. What he's trying to do is say that we can send a separate bill, and he discussed, and I think we discussed for about an hour in debate on the reason he was doing that, and that's why we passed through the House. Besides that, I didn't work on that part of the bill. This was added into the bill as a substitute, so I can't give you a whole lot of the data that he has, but and in fairness, I understand the question. I really do.
Thank you, Representative Beverly. Number 14.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I draw your attention to Section 7, lines 254, 255? And I just want to ask you to clarify that the intent is not to specifically relate to the acts adopted by the General Assembly.
254 and 255, I'm sorry.
It says prior to the adoption, amendment, or repeal of any rule other than interpretive rules.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that it doesn't apply to any acts that have been adopted by the General Assembly.
You asked that question.
It doesn't.
I know that the intention is not there, but perhaps you might
Do you have a,
consider at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, adding some language that says rules adopted pursuant to the acts of the General Assembly clearly means that the things that we do not fall under this particular bill.
I think you could, but I think as a rule, the General Assembly creates laws or resolutions. The verbiage would prevent that from being interpreted as legislative acts. I'm curious of how would you want to say it?
Just like I just said, after interpretive rules, I put a comma and say adopted pursuant to acts of the General Assembly. And that way it would be clearly spelled out that we are not saying that the laws that we make are pursuant to this particular bill.
I don't have concern about including that language.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Representative Darren, I'm gonna come back to you and recognize you for a motion to add that. We're gonna get lay counsel to, just take a look at that real fast. Thank you. All right, back to the Christmas tree, number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that there's already been a question and possibly a motion around the Section 6, which has the appointments. But I'm curious if there was any mention or thought about including minority business sectors like the Georgia Black Chamber of Commerce or the Georgia Hispanic Chamber. I'm curious as to why we're adding NFIB. And
If I can go ahead and address that and I can help you here, I'm gonna come back to Chairman Peak and go ahead and recognize you for a motion. That way it'll save the question and nobody else is looking at section 6. Chairman Peak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Now,
All right, here we go.
Chairman
All right,
Peak.
section 6. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we strike lines 215 to 248 in its entirety, and then obviously would need to renumber the sections accordingly, and renumber the lines accordingly.
All right, we've got a motion to strike section 6 in its entirety with the appropriate line numbers, and we've got a second. Is there any opposition to that from this committee? We do have opposition.
yes.
All right, let's take a vote then. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign.
No.
Motion carries. Section 6 is struck.
Just a point of interest, didn't you say line 215?
Would you like to be recognized right there? What number are you?
I thought he said 215. So if we're going to take section 6, it's 212.
The chair recognized the motion as striking section 6 in its entirety
Good
by
deal.
the appropriate lines. Okay, thank you. All right, back on the question board now. Number 27.
Okay, I gotta go back to where it was. I didn't know if, wasn't sure if Representative Beverly was going to, submit an amendment to have that, language removed that was tacked on to this bill. Section 4?
I know the representative had questions, but he did Representative,
Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
works better when you go to your tenor.
I don't know why, somewhere, but
Representative
anyway,
Carter, I know that
none
he
of my business.
mentioned, he had questions about it, but he never expressed any intent. Representative
No, I just
Beverly?
talked to Representative Harrell about it. Oh, is he in here?
He is not.
Yeah, no, I don't have any
Okay.
significant heartburn
All right.
about that. But the point of clarity, just for a second, the section that we just struck, is that going to come back up?
No, it
somewhere
is
else?
not.
That's it. Okay, thank you.
All right, let's get back in a manner of order here. Number 24, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Chairman. I
Did you
guess,
have another question?
well, I guess if he wasn't gonna make a motion, I just wasn't sure why it is in this bill if we already have a bill that this is in, that left the House. 'Cause it just appears that this bill really is dealing with business, and then, I don't know if this was specifically just for businesses, but or would this affect, personal residential property taxes and that's why I'm just trying to look confused. So if he wasn't, maybe I need to.
And it's a good question, and that one has been brought up. That House Bill 204 was added to Senate Bill 2 on the nature of dealing with government, local government, not dealing with small business and resident, but based on the premise of local government. I had asked, it is germane based on the rule of council, and so that's why we allowed it in here for a substitute for this committee to take up for consideration.
Okay, well, I have a strong objection with section 4 being in this particular bill.
If the lady would like to make a motion to take action on that, I would recognize her for that, and we'll put it on in this committee for a vote if that's what we need to do. But at this time, I want
Okay.
you to abstain from that
Okay,
motion. Let's hear from a couple more, okay?
okay, thank you.
Number 24, Chairman Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 3, this is regarding our professional licensing boards. As I look at it, this is putting a requirement on all of our licensing boards that they create immediately a criteria for, I guess, folks who are coming in to this state, that they create a way in which they can get a license very quickly. Otherwise, it's saying on line 99 that the only way you can get out of this is through if the boards then can I guess show that it would pose a significant danger to life, health, safety of the public, then they would not be required to issue a transfer license. A couple of things having gone through, in some boards this may be okay, but I know a lot of our boards are professional versus more of a trade type situation. So you got reciprocity issues that are out there. So all of a sudden we're telling another state you've got to accept. We're going to accept you your members, but you won't accept our guys going across the other way, which is a big deal with reciprocity. But the second thing is that if you go back and even read some of the Supreme Court cases, I mean, the states are supposed to govern that individually. So you may have states that may have different education requirements out there. So I guess my question is, are we starting to get a little bit too far into looking at each and every individual licensing board and starting to dictate, that everybody gets a license in Georgia, unless you can prove, the only way you can get out of this is to prove this. Georgia may have stricter standards than somebody else, but I don't know if that would rise up to the effect of safety or health, or it just maybe Georgia wants a higher standard. And this is a real question, because I've as a member of a board and also have done prior legislation a couple of years ago. These are some serious questions that I want to make sure we don't go off the deep end here on this.
I'm not, and forgive me, because it seems like it was an eternity ago. Were you here for the last committee meeting?
No.
Because I just wanted to know where to back up to on the
And
explanation.
Senator, if you will, and I apologize, we've been back and forth on other
No.
committees. So
I didn't
no,
think you were playing hooky.
no, I appreciate it. No,
I
if
just
you
didn't know where to start.
Yes.
How this thing originally started was the boards were going to give a provisional license to those coming in to states that have standards where the criteria is equal to or greater than the standards that we require in this state. Now, they know what they are. So you know which states have equitable standards, because they're bless you. We've passed out of the Senate a couple of bills this time dealing with nursing, for example. We did one where we had a law on the books here in Georgia where we could have medical professionals come in from out of state during an emergency situation, but they could only attend to the people that were citizens from the state in which they came. So you're going through the fields going, are you from Alabama? Are you from Alabama? Okay, good. I can help this one. It's from Alabama. But we know that what the standards are, especially in our cross-boundary states. So you look at that and you say, instead of doing a provisional where these are and then having the board reconvene again to look at those, the requirements and saying, yeah, we now will give you a permanent license. We said if they meet the criteria on the first one, they're eligible for a permanent license. Now, doctors have a little bit different process. And there are several that we talked about in the last committee meeting that are broader standards that we accept across the state. But matter of fact, today I carried a bill for Representative Williams in the Senate, passed 52-0, that was teachers coming into the state that were spouses of military personnel. And if the deal was, if their certification met the requirements in the state of Georgia, then they could be certified to teach in the state of Georgia. A couple of years ago, we did that with nurses of military personnel that came into the state.
And Senator, I see, there are instances, and I don't disagree with that. There may be instances where that is a great idea or it fits, but I'm also trying to think about maybe some of the other professionals and then reciprocity. you know, are other states recognizing our license on the other end? Because traditionally, we have had reciprocity when if we do, we have an agreement that each state will recognize, you know, each state. So I'm trying not to make it too one-sided here, and I've got just some concerns. Then the other things, you know, maybe engineering. Maybe the engineering in Georgia on the coast may be different than what somebody is used to an engineering license, and, you know, say the central part of the United States, just due to different codes and things like that. So that's where I'm trying to make sure that I see where you're going with this, and in general, that's fine. I just want to make sure we don't get too much in the weeds and make such a blanket statement that it maybe defeats some of the individual judgment that our boards have made as far as what we in Georgia want. This is it's a serious question. Just because I've moved, you know, the accounting board a couple of years ago, I've just had a little background in this.
And you know, we all fortunately in the state have day jobs that we go back to after we're done here. Mine requires certification across multiple states. So I understand that. Mine also deals with reciprocity across multiple states. So I'm very sensitive to that fact. But these are people that have moved, have established domicile in the state of Georgia. These are not people from Ohio that are operating in both Ohio and Georgia. They have moved to the state and established their domicile here. So and the reason I say that is the reciprocity piece is, and I'm gonna get blown out of the water on this one because of my poor choice of words, but I'm gonna do it anyway, is not as prevalent or important to me on this as it is for those that are transient back and forth across multiple state boundaries. These are people that are moving here, that are wanting to work here, that want to live here and make Georgia their residence.
Chairman Knight, you have, my board was almost clean. Thank you. Number 13, Representative Henson.
Thank you. I have several questions here. Got that. I have a question if we go to page 2, dealing with, probably I guess in section 2 where it says, lines 45, where it says each county and municipality shall notify each applicant upon receipt and verification, then application is complete. Well, I was sort of wondering what that meant. Does that mean that the county has completed all required reviews of the submitted application, the plans, the reports, or other supporting documentation, and or what exactly does it mean?
Yes. Means basically that they met all their obligations.
That the county or municipality has met all their, maybe we need some language that clarifies that better.
On 45, 46, where would you think and what?
Possibly you want to say something like an application is considered processed when the county or municipality completes all required reviews of submitted application, plans, reports, or other supporting documentation, and provides the applicant with either the permit or license for which the applicant applied or response from the county or municipality indicating what revisions, supplemental information, or additional documentation must be provided to obtain the permit or license.
I think you got all that.
I'd be glad to hand it to him.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
More than happy
Well,
to.
thank you, Representative Henson. And to my presenters at the table, if you will, just hold tight. We have Mr. Higbee from Legislative Council here, and we appreciate your work and diligence on this. I want to, while he's reviewing what Representative Henson said, I want to revert back to Representative Drenner's proposed add on line 254, after interpretive rules, inserting a comma, putting adoptive pursuant acts of the General Assembly. It's my understanding, we checked with Legislative Council, there's not any need for that language. So, I'm gonna ask you just refrain from that, because it'd just be redundant at that point. And while he's checking over Representative Henson's language,
Excuse me,
I'm gonna recognize, yes,
I
ma'am.
haven't finished.
You had more?
Oh, yes.
Would you, does that mean you'd like to be recognized, offer more?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, sir. On line 49, where it says for each 10 days, could we add in between the word 10 and days for each operating business days, for each 10 operating business days? So there's a clarification, so it wouldn't be misinterpreted to include holidays or weekends.
It looks like it's already in there, plus,
Where?
basically, you're getting 30 days earlier, you're getting 30 days from the start, okay? So with this, you're getting 10, from what you're reading, and I'm sorry I didn't pick up exactly, I see 10%, you're wanting to take line 49, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And put 10 days instead
10
of?
for each 10 operating business days. So it does not include weekend days or holidays.
Well, in the 30 days, that's basically what I'd mentioned last meeting, that's 6 weeks. 30 days if you're looking at business days. And so you're already giving them 30 days. I've explained this a bunch more to the others, that if you look at 10 more days, that's 40 days. You still are giving them 39 basic days to do their job. Now, where you're saying that you want to put 10 days, I want to make sure.
You already have 10 days here. You have the word 10 days. I
Right.
just want to clarify that it's days that they're open and operating for business.
Right, and they're probably not open on Saturday and Sunday. I know in my county, they're not.
right.
If it's a snow day, or if we have some type of an act of God, I guess you could say, there, that would be an interpretation to fall within the days they already have.
You know, I would agree with you, except for the fact that when we're required to file financial reports, and it says 7 days, it literally means 7 days, including weekends and holidays.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, that's the reason I'm asking for
No,
that
no, and I-
clarification.
Is it the 30?
Senator?
If I could, I was looking for it, Representative, because what you're describing was the original language, that a working day means a day, a business day.
Yeah.
And so that's the intent. The language has been shifted a little bit, so I'm trying to find it on the fly here, but I am not,
But
I'm
it's-
not,
Yeah?
I'm not against your language.
Okay.
So don't argue on I'm pulling for you on this one.
Thank you. I was just going to tell you what line.
Okay.
May I ask another, when we go to section 4 and we're talking about property tax bills? If I'm not mistaken, in DeKalb County, I get one property tax bill, and it includes my stormwater fees, it includes my sanitation fees.
Excuse me, could I get what line we were talking about, just to be
Oh,
sure?
yeah.
You said you were going to give me that line and information for us.
The line
49.
is line 49.
49 business days.
Representative Henson, I'm gonna suspend your comments on section 4, because we have somebody already wanting to be recognized on that prior to you being recognized for a comment. And let them look in, and then we'll come back to section 4 in just a moment. And this time we'll recognize number 8.
Thank you.
Representative Pizzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to my earlier questions about line 95 and 112, at the appropriate time, I'd like to offer amendments to alter that language in those two parts, Mr. Chairman.
All right, and make sure the chair's
95.
in line where you were. You want to strike legal resident and just insert domicile?
That is correct.
Okay. Everybody on the committee hear that? All right, you wanna make that in the form of a motion at this time, something that simple?
Yes, sirs, Mr. Chairman, so it'll be two separate motions. The first motion is on line 95, or I'm sorry, 94 and 95. Strike the words legal residence and insert domicile.
All right, so we've got a motion to strike legal resident and insert domicile. Do I have a second? Have a motion and a second. Any opposed? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries.
Okay, next motion, on line 112, strike the words when possible. And I guess you would strike the comma after that as well and start the sentence with such site visits.
Okay, we got a motion. Everybody on line 112, we have a motion to strike when possible and begin that sentence after the period, such site visits. We've got a motion. Do we have a second? Got a motion and a second. Any opposed? This is, no ma'am, we discussed this earlier. We're in the posture to try to move forward. We've got a lot of questions up here on getting back to your other section. We've got a motion and a second to strike when possible. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. All right. Let's see here. Number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that same page 3, just if you can clarify just a little something for me, if you don't mind, on line 94, it uses the term transferred licenses, which I don't see defined anywhere. Is there any reason we couldn't just leave out the word transferred? Because basically, their licenses won't be any different than an individual who...
Sorry, Representative, what line are you on again? I heard
sorry,
page 3.
I'm sorry, page, line 94, where we call them transferred licenses there, and then we actually call them that again on line 100 and 101. Do those licenses look any different or have anything different about them than just a license?
No, that's a,
So,
sorry, go ahead.
Basically, you said it was on 98, transferred license again.
yes. So if you just said, yeah, on 94, it established provisions for the issuance of licenses to individuals whose legal residence located in this state, and I guess we just amended, to make sure it's domiciled in this state. Right. We'll be just issuing full-fledged licenses. They're not provisional, they're not transferred, they're just licenses unless, the only time we won't be issuing them is if there's this significant danger on page 9, on line 99, significant danger to life, health, or safety. So we are just issuing a license, aren't we? This is just...
What, Representative, what I'm pretty sure that is right there is during change 45 on the language on here, we took provisional and did a cut and paste and put transferred in its place.
Okay.
So you're correct in your assessment that it should just be.
Provisional would be
license.
different, and frankly,
Right.
provisional might be actually a little easier because some of the boards do have different criteria for how to issue a provisional license a lot quicker than your final permanent license. Obviously, I know one board pretty well.
That was the original language in version number 2 of SB 2. So I understand
Would you be
where you're coming
acceptable to just changing transfer to provisional?
Wasn't that where it started?
That's kind of
It's late in the game, I know.
Representative, I am amenable to any wisdom and changes that you may put out there, but I will have you. I will say that during the multiple iterations and revisions of that section right there, the preponderance of the information was that we should not do provisional licensing. That we should do the transfer. That we have the capacity to do it. It's more. It is more efficient for the boards to do it. So, but if you would rather go back to provisional.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the reason, one of the goals of being fast is to get it out there quicker, and the boards do seem more amenable to issuing a provisional license and then allowing some of the more not as necessary due diligence to come in later, but it allows an individual in particular who lives here to go on and start working a little sooner. I'm sorry I wasn't
privy to the decision between transferred. I would contend that the word transferred really doesn't have any meaning other than the fact that we'll issue a license to somebody as long as their state met or exceeded our qualifications.
Representative, I'll go either way. I'll go provisional, or I'll be comfortable with dropping the word transferred.
Let me just hold off before, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Just keep
I'm
asking.
gonna ask you.
Defer to my chairman right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you to hold off for the time being and not try to make a motion. You've got we're getting our doctors fired up here now, so we got no your seatmate, the other doctor. we got when my two doctors start going back and two with their buttons, I get a little nervous myself.
Can we get the lawyers to sit behind them? So
They don't get licenses. They do their own.
Dr. Beverly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to go back to section 4 for just a second. I hate to do this, but I have a little bit of an angst over revenues that are not collected by
Dr. Beverly.
Yes.
Let me interrupt you. I apologize. With all due respect, I held Representative Henson off on section 4. I want to make sure, Ms. Carter, I want to make sure we're all singing on the same sheet of music. Are you and Dr. Beverly on the same page with what your intent is with number 4?
Well, I was gonna ask you a question. I was planning to ask you a question when you came back to me, but I think I may be, and if this is appropriate.
Can I ask y'all to turn around and have a conversation?
Have a little meeting.
And then let's come back to that. Number 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Senator Dugan, I think I have a few questions regarding Section 7 still. I believe you said during subcommittee that this section would apply to all executive agencies, or at least it would change the process in which they appeal or change some of their regulations. Is there any concern about unintended consequences that would result, since this would have a very large impact on how regulations would be appealed? So any concerns regarding that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We obviously haven't gotten a chance to really know each other. I have I
was trying to make it where he could hear you.
A wry sense of humor, so I ask you, for those that know me a little bit better, crap, here he goes again. Yes, I have a concern with every piece of legislation that we pass, that there may be something in there that we have not, as humans, really taken fully into account, and that would have an issue later on. I also understand that that the goodness about our legislative process, it's not one and done. That we with a wide collection of minds participating together to draft a piece of legislation, put one out there that we think is the best for the greatest number of Georgians. Now, every once in a while, we find one that's not exactly perfect, and we come back the next year and we modify it. That being said, I don't see anything in here that causes me undue concern. So there's a little bit difference. I always worry about everything, but there's nothing in here where I look at it and say, man, if the moon doesn't come up just right on here, we're in big trouble.
I think my concern is this bill is in regards to efficiency for small businesses and applications, and yet Section 7 would apply to Department of Agriculture, Department of Corrections, Department of, list goes on and on.
Right.
So in terms of how they modify their rules, it almost seems, to a degree, a separate bill or process. If the intention is to limit the rulemaking process just for businesses, to facilitate efficiency in the application process for licenses, would you be perhaps open to limiting the specific types of agencies where this rulemaking process would apply?
Yeah, but it's not just for businesses. It's for businesses and individuals. So it's a broader spectrum than what you just described right there. And I've talked with the commissioners of the different agencies, and what they're saying is they'll have to do a little tweaking, but it's not whole-scale changes.
Okay.
I know that there was a rumor going around today that the Department of Ag had an amendment that they wanted to bring forward today. I talked with Commissioner Black right before he walked in. He goes, don't know where that came from. That's not me. We're comfortable with the bill. You know, like any year y'all go down there, we're gonna have to do some minor adjustments, but it's not a wholesale change.
Okay. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Representative. Thank you, Senator. Number 23, Chairman Peak.
Mr. Chairman, and to the author and my friend in the House, I know y'all put a lot of work into this thing, and it seems like it's got a lot of moving parts to it. I'm wondering, Mr. Chairman, if it just may not be what you want to hear, but I wonder if it may be prudent at this time to table this bill, and let's see if we can maybe do a little more work on it. I'll defer to the chairman of the will of the committee, but I'm wondering if that may just.
Give me 1 second, Chairman Peak.
Okay.
Chairman Peak, you're quitting early this time, man. We got another 35 minutes.
I got to get back for dinner rush tonight.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask
All right.
a question that, are we gonna be getting Cheddar's and McDonald's coupons when we leave today?
You're always welcome there, my friend.
I guess with
McDonald's.
the nature of his comments, according to what he puts on the table, I don't know. All right, I want to make sure, and Dr. Beverly's doing what I had actually asked him and circling up with everybody. I want to make sure he hears what posture Chairman Peak's putting us in. Chairman Peak moves. Did you make a form of
Make a
motion?
motion that we table this, and maybe let work out some of the other details with the author and bring back at the appropriate time. If this year, great. Assuming we try and move it again this year. Yeah, yes, to make the motion is, motion is to table the bill for.
Okay. We got, all right. We've got a motion to table this bill, and without even saying a word, I heard several seconds. We're gonna take a vote on that. Are there any opposed to tabling the substitute to Senate Bill 2? Got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Yeah. 7. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. Let's get a hand count right here. Hold your hand up high if you're opposed to tabling Senate Bill 2. 1, 2, 3. All right, switch. All right, the tables win. We're going to table this bill, and Senator Dugan, I would ask that you and Representative Donahue hold tight for just a minute and meet with me. And ladies and gentlemen, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to seeing y'all in economic development.